Honk.
And once again, the honk will lead them. What's going on, everyone? Welcome, Arvanauts. Welcome, everybody, to a Thursday night stream. Slightly earlier Thursday night stream than usual, but none the more important for that, or none the less important is what I meant to say for that, because we are here with a very special conversation today. I'm really excited about this. I don't think I've actually had a chance to talk about this particular topic in this particular way, but it is a great pleasure to welcome everybody to a conversation on audiobook narration. If you were thinking to yourself, man, I wonder how people make those awesome audiobooks that everyone knows and everyone loves, and I wonder how, we do that. And you're like, how can I find out more? Well, you're in the right place, because I am going to be providing to you right here in River City, I'm going to be providing to you a conversation with these lovely folks, with two very experienced audiobook narrators, and one who is both an author. I just almost said audiobook. One who is an author, but is also a person who narrated the audiobook for this work. So I'm very excited about that. Hey, what's up, Balsteg? And good to see everybody. Great pleasure to have everyone on board for this, and I will introduce those folks in just a minute. But before I do so, just a couple of reminders about way to support us here on the channel. If you haven't done so already, please make sure to follow us here on the channel. If you have not already done so, please consider heading over to YouTube with !ArvTube and subscribing to me over there. It's free for you to do that, but it really helps us out when you do. You can get extra content and stuff like that as well. If you have not already done so, please consider checking out my Blue Sky. That's !ArvSky. You can follow me over there and get all the information on that microblogging platform of choice at the moment. Website for this, arvanelleron.com. Thank you for the follow. Speaking of that, that is actually great, because I was just about to say that we can also do some other things to support the channel. You can, for example, support by checking out our shop, !Arv Shop. We have a bunch of merchandise relating to various things that we do on this channel. You can also do !Arvtreon. That's the Patreon, which gets you some cool stuff and also supports the channel as well. And you can also subscribe to the channel to get you those custom sub badges and emotes to use here, there, and everywhere across Twitch, and also get a couple of additional things, including inspirations to help our tabletop players. You can do that here as well. On the publishing front, since we're going to be talking about that to begin with, !Icarus, that's my graphic novel from Athos Arts. !Library is my Tales and Tomes, The Forbidden Library. That's my 5e adventure and sourcebook from Alligator Alley Entertainment. And !Greyshade. You can see that currently on your screen right now, the audiobook cover, and that is Greyshade, my Greyshade IP, Greyshade Renegade and Heretic, the Grey Assassin trilogy from Athos Arts, award-winning and critically acclaimed. You can get those at that link. You can also get the audiobooks, who would have thought, of Greyshade Renegade and Heretic from our very own Tren Sparks at that link. And you can also pre-order the tabletop role-playing game of Greyshade, coming to you soon from Alligator Alley Entertainment and designed by our very own Brandon O'Brien, so you can do that as well. And as always, !BLM, Black Lives Matter, important to affirm and assert the significance and importance of Black lives. !Help Now, the World Health Organization page on suicide prevention. Important to reach out to others when you need help and reach out to others when they need help as well. And !Ukraine, Ukraine, to help the people of Ukraine as they fight back against an illegal and illegitimate war with bravery and courage. It's a war that they're winning, by the way, right now. And do so with bravery and courage, and send the message that we will do so for others in that situation in the future. Also, continued love and support to the people of Minnesota, and specifically Minneapolis, continuing to battle and fight back against federal occupation. We are very grateful to them for their inspiration. Keep it up. We see you, we hear you, we love you. Thank you for doing what you do. Schedule tonight. So we've got this conversation going on tonight with these three folks I'm about to introduce. And then I'm going to be about 8:30 or so. We'll be transitioning over to Gloomhaven, that awesome game, which I will be playing with one Mr. Zach Clay, who's done a little bit of audio work in his time as well. Zach and I will be doing our continued playthrough of Gloomhaven. Then I'll be off tomorrow, and on Saturday we've got more of either Tactical Breach Wizards or Magic the Gathering Forge Adventure Mode, which I've been having a ton of fun with as well. And also, one reminder, sounds good, Balsteg. And of course, Balsteg, hugely instrumental as well in getting this done in the audiobook format. Balsteg really helped put a lot of this stuff together and did a wonderful job with it. So I'm very very grateful to Ballsteg from Athos Arts for doing that. And thank you for stopping by. And one other thing that I wanted to mention, of course, is that a week from today is the pre-show. Same to Emily as well, Ballsteg. Same to Emily as well. Well, 1 week from today is the pre-show of ArvCon 2026, which Athos Arts is one of the kind sponsors for. Very excited about that. I meant to actually post the schedule for that today. I'm going to end up posting it tomorrow because today has been quite a day. But tomorrow we will end up posting the schedule for ArvCon 2026. Very excited about it. It's going to start with a pre-show on Thursday, and then we'll continue Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and conclude on Monday, Memorial Day in the United States, to benefit the Damon Runyon Cancer Research Foundation. So mark your calendars, folks. It's happening Thursday night, a week from tonight. It begins with the pre-show. So I'm very excited for that. But now it is time to bring folks into this mix. And so I'm going to unmute myself and apologize to anyone that I may have interrupted because I couldn't hear them. And then I'm going to unmute them. And last but certainly not least, I'm going to head over to reveal, if I did this properly, yes, I did, the amazing crew that we have for you tonight to speak about audiobooks near, far, and high and low. I don't know where I'm going with that. But anyway, all different kinds of audiobooks that we have here. So I am joined by three luminaries in this field. I will start with the luminary to, as you're looking at the screen, the left, down to the left of my picture, bottom left, there in the little wheel, I guess, wheel of celebrities. And that is C.S.E. Cooney. Of course, Claire is familiar to people on this channel, I hope, having been in several tabletop productions here. But also, in this context, is a wonderful author, World Fantasy Award winning, let's make that clear, author. And also, of course, an audiobook narrator, which is the real reason that I wanted Claire to come on tonight. So, Claire, it's good to see you. Can you tell me just briefly, before I introduce everybody else, is there sort of a, like, origin story where you're like, I always knew from the time I was 3 that I wished to narrate audiobooks? Like, can you tell me briefly what got you interested in doing this? And I'm going to ask the same questions to the other folks in a minute.
Sure. I always from a very young age would tell everybody I'm going to be an actress and a writer, like two things inseparable.
Right.
And I went to a high school for the performing arts, you know, with concentration in acting and voice. Like I had voice lessons since I was 11, went to a college for the performing arts, double majored in fiction and acting. You know, worked in bookstores. And because I was constantly working 3 jobs to pay for college, I didn't get to be in a lot of theater. So most of my acting would come out at conventions, like SFF conventions, reading my own work. It was such a relief to be able to use that and to be able to pass some of the techniques along to people, writers who had not had theater training, to be able to help them read in public. And all of that post college, you know, poverty line, living $10 an hour job so I could write. I finally got to be in theater again because I had time, no money, but lots of time, which was absolutely, I would choose it again and again. And in that time, I was really like, anytime I could do a podcast or like be a narrative voice, and anytime I heard somebody who's working adjacent to the audiobook industry, I'm like, hey, I really love to get in. How do you? And everybody was very cagey with their answers, which I now understand why. And eventually Tantor Audio was hiring locally in Connecticut and Rhode Island, and I happened to be in Rhode Island, able to commute in, able to audition. I'd sent in my application, didn't hear anything for 3 months, was crushingly disappointed, then suddenly was like, hey, came across my desk, you want to come in? Went in, got through half of one of the sides, and they're like, okay. And I was like, oh no, they hated me, I screwed it up. And they're like, so do you like audiobooks? And I'm like, do I like audiobooks? Yes, I like audiobooks.
Say you like audiobooks?
Yeah, and I think it's because I'd spent the last few years like brushing up in theater and doing a lot of like podcasts for genre magazines and short fiction. I actually had built something of a resume which hadn't existed since before college because I didn't have any time other than my degree, which was ended up being a minor in theater. So that's the origin story. But I recently found a picture of myself as a child with like headphones on. I was maybe 3 or 4 with a cassette tape, like listening to an audiobook because I went to sleep. Audiobooks on tape, you know.
Yeah,
and I
sure.
was like, I think I have always loved being read to. I've loved reading aloud my work personally. It's part of my drafting process, is reading it to as many people who will stay still and listen to me. And I love interpreting other people's text. I kind of think of myself as like Mel Brooks and Looney Tunes, where even if I don't personally love the text as a reader, I always love it as an actor, no matter what, because it's always fun to interpret the text. It always takes the whole of my mind and the breadth of my abilities to do it justice, you know. So that's my origin story.
Oh, very, very cool. Yeah, U.S. Norway points out, so school was holding you back. It's like,
No, I learned I would go back to school in a heartbeat. I just maybe would think differently about what kind of school and how much I was willing to spend on it for the next 30 years.
that's very, very totally understandable, but I'm glad that it ended up in the way that it did, and we got to have the benefit of your skill and ability in the audiobook field. All right, well, so you're going to hear more from Claire a little bit later on. In fact, you're going to, if I can do everything properly, you're going to hear a little bit more from Claire with maybe a little bit of a sample. We'll see if I can.
Oh,
If I can
oh
throw
dear.
that in there. But the second luminary that I want to introduce, which is to the right of the screen, as you're looking below my picture now, is Mr. Tren Sparks. Now, those who are on my channel have seen Tren a lot as part of various tabletop campaigns and things like that. But you will notice, so I put Saint Death's Daughter, about which more above Claire's picture there, which Claire both wrote and narrated. And here I have put Greyshade, which Tren did not write. I did, but he did in fact narrate it. Tren is the major person for BattleTech and Shadowrun audiobooks, by the way. So a lot of BattleTech and Shadowrun audiobooks come Tren's way as well. So Tren is a very good person to ask about this. So Tren, thank you for joining us too. And I want to ask the same question. By the way, chat, I have heard some versions of these stories before a little bit, but you haven't. That's why I'm asking, because I really am curious to. I like origin stories, and I want to know how people got to things that they love. So, Tren, how did you get into the position of being someone who wanted to do this audiobook narrating thing? Like, how did you get into it? What's your origin story for this?
Well, very much like my colleague there, always was doing acting in crazy voices, or wanted to. And my family was always, oh, you're really good at acting, do crazy voices, which is very objective, subjective, subjective,
Subjective.
subjective.
It was
So
clearly objective, no question, Tren. I can officially say that now.
It was
The
his
whole
objective.
universe.
Yeah, right, exactly.
so I it's not that I never put much store in it, but I just, these are people who are like my friends and family, and yeah, okay, yeah, thanks. They tell you did really good, but maybe you didn't quite do so well. I remember seeing videotape of me as a younger child and being like, oh God. Oh God, no. Doing imitations of Jimmy Carter, just horrible, horrible impersonations of Jimmy Carter, really bad. But good peanuts. Anyway, so it wasn't until probably the mid 90s when I was working on a kid show in San Jose called Adventures with Kangarati. And I wound up doing the voice of the robot from Lost in Space for one of the episodes. And while we were recording it, the director was like, have you ever considered doing this for a living? And I was like, no, not really. And she said, you should. I was like, all right. That is objective. Good. That is somebody who's not trying to spare my feelings.
Sure.
That is objective. All right. That is good critique. I will bear that in mind. 10 years later, so obviously I didn't jump on it right away. I was working at Electronic Arts, and I was working on Brutal Legend at the time. We were wrapping that up, but they were also making Dead Space 2 at the time, and they needed volunteers to do scratch audio and, placeholder stuff. And so I auditioned for that, and they said, yeah, sure, we'd love to have you do this thing. So they had me record this character who ultimately wasn't in the game at all. But it wasn't going to be me anyway, so what difference does it make? Because they were going to have the other voice actor come in and ADR over it. But when we finished recording it, and I had told them, as long as I get a copy for my demo reel, I'm fine. And so the audio engineer and I were in the vault, and he was copying the thing to a thumb drive, and he said, have you ever considered doing this for a living? And I was like, yeah. And he said, you should. You put
Oh,
more into that than most of the professionals they bring in here. And I was like, that is also objective. Okay. Hmm. The next month, they laid off 1,800 of us and said, here's your severance check. And I'm like, thank you. And I was gone. And I was like, I'm going to use this to buy my first set of recording gear. Here we go. And so I shifted into what I wanted to do was video games and occasionally animation and on rare occasion an audiobook. But my career wound up being exactly the other way around. So I mostly do audiobooks. Occasionally I get to do an animation. On very rare occasion I get to do a video game.
Like, for example, when you were the main bad guy in the BattleTech video game, the hit BattleTech video game from Harebrained Schemes. I just would
It
like
was
to point
pretty
that
good.
out. Yeah, it was.
It's
It
pretty
sure
good.
was.
That's not where it started,
I
though.
know. I know.
The current stuff started with you,
Yep.
um, in Seattle at Harebrained Schemes doing the Shadowrun release. And when if you go back and you look up the video, you can see Mitch Gittleman sitting next to him
Yep.
when I deliver Duncan Wu's first line, which is, well, don't you look like shit? And you see Mitch kind of go,
Yeah.
oh,
It's 100% true.
oh.
And he looked over at me, and he's like, and I was just sort of like smugly. I'm like, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah.
That's right. You know,
I love it. I love it. Oh
Yeah.
my
oh, it's
gosh.
so good. So good. And that's what led to me getting the role in BattleTech. And so that was a lot of fun. And then at some point we were doing, I guess it might have been Horde of the Dragon Queen. And at some point, John was like, hey, you ever think about narrating audiobooks? And so I was like, I mean, I can, it's not that big of a deal. And so I wound up going to work for Catalyst to do those things that I just said.
BattleTech and Shadowrun and all that stuff.
Yeah, that stuff. Audiobook, yeah.
And to do Gray Shade. I'm going to talk to you more about the Gray Shade narration.
I've heard of
at some
that.
point, but,
Yeah.
I love that story. Well, so the final luminary that I have here, down at the bottom of the screen, but not the bottom of our hearts, is a fellow Athos artist, Athos author, along with me, and that is Andrew Hiller. And you can see the book above, which I will increase the title or the picture size for just a moment. You can see right there, that is Hornytown Chutzpah, which I'm sure I have not pronounced quite properly, but close.
Also, birthday boy.
Yeah, exactly what I was going to say. And absolutely, and happy birthday to Andrew Hiller, who is the happy birthday Andrew. So the author of Hornytown Chutzpah, and also the audiobook narrator, along with his sister, I believe. I think both of you did this, right? Of Hornytown Chutzpah. So Andrew, so welcome. And for those, because you have not been on my channel before, so for those who are not familiar with you, do you want to talk a little bit about sort of, I guess the same question, but a little bit more generally, origin story about how you came to narrate this audiobook? And I know you have a little bit of a radio background too, so maybe talk to us about where you come from in this creative/audio journey here.
So unlike Claire and Tren, I'm a little bit of a weirdo in this. Everyone has always told me I should do my audiobooks and I should narrate because I was on NPR for 15 years.
Oh, wow.
And I hosted an international science, health, and tech show that went on in 53 countries. And then I had my little stint with the Muppets. And so I've done all these things. I like to joke that one of my plays made it to Broadway. It was 78th and Broadway. But
It counts.
but it was on Broadway. And yet, I've always said through each iteration, especially when it comes to my fiction, I don't necessarily want to be the person acting in my plays or voicing my audiobooks because I believe in the happy accident too much.
Yeah.
I'm afraid that I'm going to be so locked into my vision that I'll miss opportunities.
Yeah.
That I'll miss the wonder. And one of the great things you see in audiobooks and plays and movies, but especially plays, I think, is if you're lucky enough to sit in a theater 7 days in a row, you will see 7 very slightly different performances.
Right.
Yeah. Some of my favorite stuff.
Yeah. And just some of that slightly different intonation, some of that slightly different use of pause, some that slightly different interaction between characters makes the writer so much more brilliant than they actually are. Not that we're not utterly brilliant to begin with.
I mean,
But so all these things. So when they approached me and said, would you like to do this? I said, well, I have 20 years of experience behind a mic. I can do it. But I want to audition. I want to make sure, because I'm not sure that this skill set translates to that skill set.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said to myself, which you mentioned, thank you, Gregory, that I'd like Alicia to join me, and I had her audition because she has been in off-Broadway plays, and she had been on a little bit of TV. And I wanted a ringer. I wanted someone I thought could actually pull off the acting side, and more importantly, someone who could look over my shoulder and sort of direct me. And because I'm going to go to Andrew Lloyd Webber for a second. I saw an amazing version of Jesus Christ Superstar in Toby's Dinner Theater in Columbia, Maryland.
Okay.
And I was crying, and I was blown away. And then 10 years later, I saw it on Broadway, and I was like, this was a production that was actually produced by Weber. He doesn't understand his play. He doesn't get it. And so I wanted someone to sort of check me. And I desperately believe in collaboration. And I desperately believe in having that editor or that audio engineer or director or someone who can sort of look at you and say, bigger, broader, or come on, dude, that's cheesy.
Yeah.
And so that's where I've sort of come from, and that's how I sort of went. One of the opening stories, I don't know if I'll go there, but if you want to, I was debating on telling, was actually Dave Goelz's story. Dave Goelz was the original Gonzo, I believe still is, of the Muppets, and how he got his start. And if you want to, I'll talk to that later, but I don't want to steal all the time for everything else that we have planned today.
although good Gonzo talk is always appreciated, but
Good Gonzo. That sounds like a great exclamation.
It
Good
does,
Gonzo.
doesn't it?
and in fairness to him, it should be the great Gonzo, right?
Yes.
Great
it's this thing.
Gonzo.
But very, very cool. All right, well, let me broaden out the conversation a bit here for a minute, because what I want to ask is, I've heard there was a lot of talk in the green room chat before we went on here about what audio does, and Andrew's just spoken to this a little bit, what audio does to the sort of text on the page. There was an argument to be made that if you have a particular voice in your head that you're reading, that an audio sort of version of that could, grate, right? It could go against that. But I've heard just as many people, if not more, that have said, I can only hear this voice now when I read this in the voice of the person that I heard doing it in audio. And so I guess I'm interested to hear all three of you weigh in on what is it about audio in particular, not games, not video, what in particular is it about audio that does enliven a text? That's part one of the question. The second part is, are there scenarios where you feel like better off not actually trying to do audio for something like this because it's just not going to click? So I'll take anyone who wants to start. Maybe Claire, do you want to start with that actually?
Sure.
And see what you think about that.
In the green room, I mentioned how, okay, so for example, I had already read Shirley Jackson's A Haunting of Hill House years ago, and I wanted to re-engage with it because I quite enjoyed the experience. And I had this memory of it being really lambent and like effulgent and like golden, and then being really scared by it. But I didn't know why I had that memory of why was it so cheerful and then so scary. So I decided to listen to it this time. And boy, I'm a pretty fast reader, and that book is pretty slim, and I must have read it quickly, but listening to it takes hours and hours and days. And there were times where I was just like, what's happening? I was scared for longer when I was reading it. And I made the mistake of listening to his Stephen King novellas that I'd never read before on the page. And I was going along. The first one was very much one of his historical, more science fiction-y sort of ones. The second one was just brutal, short and brutal. And I was half asleep in the morning, just listening. And then I went, and I sat up. And that's what audio does, that actually reading, I never get a jump scare from reading. There's no time. I'm reading too fast too. I might have like a sickness in the pit of my stomach. Like it's like a low grade dread. But so I think audiobooks is just like everything takes longer and is elevated by the actor, hopefully, into it's a collaboration. So that's like what it does on like a horror level, or like we were talking about on a language level. If it's I can read a Lady Sherlock book by Sherry Thomas, which I love. They're so great, so beautifully done, but they're read by Kate Redding. She's the audiobook narrator. She's one of my favorites. She's British, but she can kind of do all the voices, and she's so subtle and yet so good. So I love to read them first and just kind of enjoy them, and then I will listen to them over and over again just to hear her, like, how did she do that? Oh my gosh, she's so good at, she's so sexy, and she's so pointed, and she's so funny, and like, like it, like I'm listening in a different genre for a different reason, but I often really enjoy audiobooks best if I've already read the text on the page, because otherwise I'm paying attention in a way that like I cannot be doing anything else but listening to an audiobook, which is like it's 8 hours of like I have to have a big household chore, like I have to be reshelving all the books in my house to justify that kind
Long
of
road
close
trip
listening.
or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that's what I wanted to say. And then as like Andrew's talked about the interpretation of your own text and wanting that surprise, that's where my big struggle was. My agent, my mom, my husband, they were like, you should narrate your own audiobooks, and the plus is like that you get paid again for being an actor as well as a writer, and I was like, money. On the other hand, what if there was somebody on the level of Kate Redding, somebody that I would listen to just for pleasure, reading my work? Like, I don't listen to my own audiobooks. I can't, it wouldn't give me the same kind of pleasure. I don't have an active dislike of my own voice. I quite like it, but it's a long book, and I'm not interested in it in the same way as I'm interested in narrators I really love. So that's what I wanted to say.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's good stuff. Tren, what do you think about this idea about something enlivening the text or not? And also, I'm curious if you think there are books that you're like, this did no on the audio side, it just is not going to work.
I suppose it kind of depends on the story. Of course it would. Um, for me, the way I've often described it for people who are like, I want to do voice acting, and I'm like, what kind? And like, what do you mean? And I'm like, there's a lot of different kinds of voice acting. I mean, do you mean video games? Do you mean audiobooks? And they're like, oh, I never thought about that. It's like, exactly. But when they're like, what about audio? Because it's more difficult than doing like a video game, because sometimes you're the only voice actor doing all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And you have to look at the story as a script. In my opinion, you have to look at it as a script. You have the setting, you have the pacing, you don't have to ask what's my motivation for a given character. It's right there on the page.
Yeah.
You've got everything you would have on a script, plus all of the setting and everything else. And if you really dig into it and you really analyze it, you can figure out so much more than what's just there. And that's part of, I think, Andrew, what you were saying about how you get 7 different performances is that with each narrator, they're going to pull different little bitty details and character, traits out of it that aren't on the page, but it is their interpretation that gives it a uniqueness that makes it very, very cool. So I think to touch on the books that I don't think would work well, or as an audiobook, even though I know it's been done already, is like one of my favorite series growing up was the Spellsinger series, because those who are fans of this channel know that I am a furry, and so yes, I love the Spellsinger series. But the idea of that being an audiobook, there are so many characters that go in and out. If you tried to do that with a different voice for every one of them, like you would have to do with a movie or something, it would get too cluttered and stuff, and it would become, well, cluttered, harder to keep a lock on who's doing what.
Right.
But the main character voices for like Mudge, a Cockney otter, just, calm. So That's a good spot to jump to Horny Town Chutzpah, even though it's different. But yeah, I think it's your ability as an actor, because we are actors. That is, between the words of voice acting, acting is the more important ability.
Hmm.
You may be able to do all the voices in the world, but if you can't act with them,
Yeah.
you're a minor bird. You are an organic text to speech engine,
Hmm.
and you need to be able to pull the performance out of it and translate it into something that is going to make people, almost swerve off the road. Don't do that. Don't actually do that.
Yeah, no.
But, just like you're mentioning reshelving all your books. I can imagine with a really good audiobook, you find that you've been standing there with a book in your hand, just lost in it.
Yeah.
And it's just that I love it. I love it so much.
Yeah, and it's I was thinking about I think the first exposure that I had to this in any real sense were the old NPR audiobooks of The Hobbit.
Ha.
And and The Hobbit was my favorite book. It remains, Lord of the Rings, my favorite series. It was something about it, and it's a little campy. It doesn't feature the BBC, Ian Holm and like all these people, but something about it felt very sort of enveloping in its own method of handling things, which was not extensive sound effects. And they had probably like 10 voice actors for the entire thing, and this, so you could definitely hear some reuse going on there with different people, but something about that was almost transporting, beyond just what I was thinking about. And this is a book that I was deeply familiar with, having already read it like 6 times before I first, heard the audio version of it. Yeah, there's something about it that sort of pulls you along, I guess. Andrew, let me ask you that then about, because you have a lot of this experience with audio as well, obviously now as having written in the text. Did you find in the process of reading your own work, you talked about being, concerned that you wouldn't necessarily be the best person to read your own stuff for reasons you said. But did you find that you were yourself deriving different interpretations in audio as you were going along and going through it? Did you find yourself sort of like, I don't know, maybe it sounds weird to think of yourself being transported by your own prose, but did you find your work in recording it, and then maybe listening back to it, did that have a different impact on you than just sort of reading it in text form after you had written it, do you think?
I think it does, and I think that goes to something pretty essential. Having been the playwright and having written radio scripts for news that goes into radio, you sort of learn to differentiate the modes,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so that the book is its own entity, and then the audiobook is its own entity. And you don't want to actually make it a Xerox. You don't actually want to make it a copy of one or the other. So you have to enliven it. When we talk about why audiobooks have power, I mean, on a simple scientific level, and I'm going to say this as something supporting public schools, when we look at music or audio, it activates more centers of the brain than almost any other activity.
That's right.
And so when you have an audiobook, even though it does some of the work for the reader, because you can hear the emotionality, you can hear the pause, you can hear some of the relationships a little more clearly, it still activates all those centers of the brain. It still begins to make you think and daydream and have a dialogue with the story. And I think that is something really essential. I think one of the things I began talking about, and I think Tren followed up on, is not only is it that every day for those 7 days, the actor would change the language. I think it's that because the actor comes from a different set of experiences and a different set of education and a different life, they read the book through a different prism of understanding than I wrote it. And so their truth in what they read and what they discover and what they develop is different to a degree than what I wrote. But it's also correct. it's also it is the book. Sometimes it's a better book, sometimes it's a different book, sometimes it's a complement to the story that I wrote.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I sort of said, sometimes you look at it, and I joke, oh my God, I'm a genius because of the way they said it. Yeah, and there's a very small moment in Horny Down Chutzpah in which I decided to have a black expatriate who moved into this suburb of hell to get away from racism and have a better life. And I decided to call him Jamal Sinatra. And when I was reading the book, I realized his name was not Jamal Sinatra. It was Jamal Sinatra.
Yeah, of course.
And if I'd never read it aloud, I don't think that unintentional pun would ever have occurred to me. So there are these moments that sort of peek out. There are these moments that sort of play with you as a reader, and then hopefully then plays within the reader's imagination so that they can dialogue. I mean, the oldest truism I say, which is my word for my own too often said statements, is that you know a good book when the curtain drops, the conversation starts. And I think that's what we're trying to do with an audiobook. We're trying to have a conversation start every time they stop listening and another conversation begin when the book is done. Because the reader, the listener, let me be careful with language, the listener is also an author to the book. They are also rewriting the book as they hear it through their experience.
Right. In fact, one of the interesting things about perception, right, and the reason that humans often misunderstand each other is that we are, as we perceive a thing and are trying to describe it to someone else, it's not enough for them to go, oh, you perceived it this way. They are literally, we are all, having to re-perceive, right, what it is they're telling us. And in the re-perception, it is working along our nervous system backgrounds, like whatever it is that's happening, which means when misunderstandings often happen, it's because of a sort of disconnected series of perceptions that I perceived it differently from the way you perceived it. And then it's frustrating, right? Because you're like, this is in front of me. Like, of course this meant that when I said this word, when I wrote this sentence, when I did this thing, but they're perceiving it a different way. So the sort of magic, I guess, of translating in a way, in audio form, text to speech in a real that word that we haven't gotten to that rhymes with artificial that sort of thing. That there's a sort of magic in that that allows people to experience real pleasure in the same way that a different interpretation of a given work, a different piece of music, as you said, that interpretation is equally valid and has often as much or more power for us. Like, not for nothing, Leonard Cohen, one of the greatest lyricists of all time, his version of Alleluia, not my favorite. I would argue his version is one of the least sort of resonant to me. But if you listen to the Jeff Buckley version, I mean, there's a million of these covers, right? But they all pull something hugely important from that because they're picking up on something that they're re-perceiving in a really powerful way. So, yeah. Claire.
Well, and to be fair, Leonard Cohen had 200 verses to Hallelujah and played it differently live every time. And
100%.
Jeff Buckley had heard him play it live and then did that version that he'd heard the way folk music. So It's like the one we hear Leonard Cohen singing, the recorded one is like, it's also not its ultimate form. It's just the one that got recorded.
Yeah, no, that's totally true. I mean, Bob Dylan said, right, that I think it was Jimi Hendrix's version of All Along the Watchtower was his favorite, more than his own recording, more than other people's. Were like, this is the one that he loved, the most was someone else's cover of his own work. Yeah, no, I absolutely.
But I think it.
Yeah, go ahead, Edgar, please.
I think it should be said. It's an important part of this conversation. Well, you may not enjoy that Cohen version. The frustrating and exhilarating part of art is that 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2.
Totally. Mm-hmm.
And so someone will absolutely adore that version. And they are 100% right. And you are 100% right.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which is why I hate on social media when people stomp on artists'
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
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 I on that note, I was gonna say something about like, oh yeah, the preference, Leonard Cohen. I could just geek out about Leonard Cohen. Oh, is that he famously, was like, I have no kind of voice at all. Like, why am I singing? And yet he still sang. And it's true that I love his voice, and Bob Dylan to an extent too. It's like they have idiosyncratic, maybe objectively ugly voices, though I don't actually think that. But I love hearing Cohen sing his own work in his own voice as a piece of legacy and history and tenderness. And when I was narrating my own audiobooks is like the ultimate argument to do that, at least for now, was this idea that in 100 years when I'm gone, I love listening to W.B. Yeats read his poetry in the early 20th century,
Yeah.
like right at like the edge where things were starting to be recorded. And I'm like, if it's the only record of my words and my voice, I guess let this be that version. Although part of me hopes that, like Batman and Hamlet, there will be multiple, and there's now several books that we maybe should not name have multiple audiobook versions of them. And that is, some books are lucky like that. I think that's more like theater, is like, I want multiple versions of all the books that I love.
Totally.
Because I take pleasure in hearing the collaborative interpretations in it.
Yeah, totally. Let me try an experiment. I want to see if I can play something without screwing up all the audio and video here. So let me see if I can do that. Okay, I just want to share sound. I don't want to share. It's not going to let me do it. I just know it's not going to let me do it. Okay, share computer audio. Okay, great. All right, I'm going to play this, and then hopefully people will be able to hear it. We shall see. I'm going to play a preview this was sent to me ahead of time, so this may be a good, this is a single thing that Andrew sent me. So this will be a good test. Everyone let me know if you can hear this thing that I'm about to play. Coming now, he said.
Abomination.
Okay. Did everyone hear that?
Yes.
Okay.
Abomination.
So
I'm Spartacus.
that is from Hornytown Chutzpah. You could talk about that in a minute, Andrew, but I'm going to play a little bit more of a preview from this. So here's a little bit more from Hornytown Chutzpah, which is Andrew and his sister Alicia doing this.
This is Audible.
Never mind that part.
Athos Arts presents Hornytown Chutzpah by Andrew Hiller, narrated by me, Andrew Hiller, and my amazing sister, Alicia Hiller. The intro and outro music for this novella is Pet Shop Reject by Joff Harvey and can be found on Pixabay.com. Content notes for this and all Athos Arts titles can be found at athosarts.com.
All right, let me get about 10 seconds of, or 30 seconds of the first one.
To my dad, who taught me to value the serious and silly equally. Through him, I learned that every idea deserves honest scrutiny and an occasional nose tweak. The 10 Commandments, according to Saul the Wise Guy. 1. God's not the jealous type, but just like it goes with your mother, don't forget to call once in a while. 2. Don't fall for cons. Stay away from cults. Read the fucking fine print. 3. People love to misquote and manipulate scripture. That's a pit trap, Boobala. 4. Work is good, but don't wear yourself down. Saturday's a good day to chill and maybe study your Torah a little bit. 5. Stop kvetching all the time. Love those who nurture and support you. Nurture and support them in return. 6. Thou shalt not commit murder. No jokes on this one, kiddo. 7. Keep your promises. Don't cheat. Don't allow your name and your word's value to fluctuate like a currency market. 8. Don't be a ganef. 9. Talk bullshit? Get hit by the bull. Or, don't bullshit unless you want to get the horns. 10. If you're not fucking 2, don't take someone's toy just because they're playing with it.
All right. So, talk to me a little bit, Andrew, about that. I guess the way that you went about as you were actually starting to record this. Talk to me a little bit about the voice that you provided, which feels like a pretty, a variant of what you've been talking to us with now, but maybe turned up to 11 or shifted or morphed a little bit. Talk to us a little bit about that. I'm going to do the same thing with Tren and Claire.
So I think when I wanted to do Saul, who is the main character, I did want it to mostly be me, because I did worry about being consistent. If I did my Ringo or I did some other voice, if I went into one of my other voices, would I be able to carry it through? Would I be able to have the subtlety in emotion that I want to? Or as Claire was saying, would I simply be parroting and working too hard at generating the accent? Actually sort of going to Dave Gold's story that I was going to talk about. Dave Gold was never studied theater and never studied puppetry. He went into the Muppets having done essentially he brought a puppet he reverse engineered after watching Sesame Street to a dinner party in which Frank Oz was there, and Frank liked his puppet, so he invited him to meet Jim. Jim invited him to go to London and be a part of the Muppet Show.
Wow.
And so every time...
It's a hell of a dinner party.
Yeah. Every time someone famous came in, Danny Kaye would come in, Diana Ross would come in, Elton John would come in, he would exit the room. He didn't feel like he belonged. He didn't feel like he could do it. And so he said, if you listen to the first season of the Muppets, he was really downbeat. He was really depressed. He was very quiet in his voice. And it got to the point where Frank Oz came to him and he put his arm around his shoulder and said, look, your job is to be a fool. You actually can't go too big. You've just got to do it. And so that was sort of the mantra I tried to repeat to myself over and over as I was recording Hornytown Chutzpah.
It's a great mantra. Amazing.
It is a great mantra, and one of the things I was thinking about as I was listening to it is you can inhabit I feel like once the listener can inhabit the narrative voice, right, or feel like they're comfortable with it, they can hang with it. That makes a huge difference, it seems to me, towards their being invested in it. So, as you were, I guess my question would be, as you're in the process of doing this and you're thinking about how to sort of, tweak, pull forward, back off as necessary, did you find yourself like being able to settle in well into Saul's voice over time? I know you said you kept repeating to yourself this mantra, but did you find like the voice itself became something you could occupy, I guess?
So I'm going to give Alicia a little more credit here, too, because the very first iteration I tried, I think I tried to do Mike Hammer. I tried to do that very sort of hard-hitting noir, hit all the rhythm and all the beats. And Alicia listened to it and said, it's good, but it's so angry. And I don't think your story is angry. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then I said, well, let me actually enjoy reading this story. Let me
You
not
stop
try.
being angry in reading it.
Yeah. And so, every so often Alicia would be like, Saul realizes this is bullshit. So let's hear that in your voice, that you realize, oh, this is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And so we began playing with sort of that kind of thing, which I think brings in more my sensibility. And in writing noir, one of the things I wanted to do was pay homage to noir, but also go against some of the limitations of classic noir. I didn't want it to be misogynistic. I didn't want it to be caught in one rhythm. I didn't want the characters to really live in a stereotype, so that you knew exactly who every character was, every moment of every scene, of every movement. So I tried to diversify, and ironically, the best way to diversify is to be myself. And I guess the last thing I would say is the other reason I wanted to keep most of my voice as Saul is because in many respects, your main character, especially when you're doing first person, has to also be the straight man. He's not the jokester. And so if I'm being very silly, if I'm goofing around all the time, it doesn't give the listener an anchor.
Yeah.
So you have to sort of allow them to go with you and allow the other things to be goofy and silly and over the top.
Yeah.
And when Saul does get his moments, revel in it.
Yeah, it's interesting. And the idea of sort of getting the right tone for it, I think, is fascinating as a result of that. All right, let me do Claire next, and then Tren. So this is from Claire's Saint Death's Daughter. Let me see if I can do again what I did before. Okay, it looks right. And this is from the audiobook narrated by C.S.E. Cooney and written by C.S.E. Cooney.
This is Audible.
Nope,
By
not that part.
C.S.E. Cooney.
All right. Audible by C.S.E. Cooney. No. Okay.
All of it.
Prologue.
She
Rain Day, 29th. Month of Embers. 413 Founding Era. 121 days till winter solstice. Amanita muscaria stones, care of Jur Lady Galethai, Caravan School. The Traveling Palaces of Higher Quadib. Way Station 7. Nita. They are both dead. Father a month ago, mother last week. While I was unable to change the fact of their deaths, I did my best to raise them up after. I followed Irradiant Stones' comprehensive treatise on the benefits of revitalizing your revenants while their flesh is more or less fresh, which is, as texts on death magic go, fairly straightforward. Such a complex resurrection rite, however, requires a high holy fire feast, and, alas, autumn equinox had already come and gone by the time they brought Father's body home. When Mother died, we were nowhere near a surge. My attempts failed. Mostly failed. Father did open his eyes, down in Stone's ossuary, and blink a few times, but he had no more sense than a baby bird. Mother was more emphatic in her response. She spat black blood at me and cursed. I could not understand the words. They were probably gibberish. The prevailing theory is that the dead lose their memory quickly, and without a mature necromancer's blood to spark it back, language is the first thing to go. My own blood, alas, will not attain full maturity for a few years yet. Neither of our parents' corpses stayed animate for more than a few minutes. Their remains turned to sludge soon after I performed the rite, and I did not have opportunity for further experimentation. Now for more staggering news. Just this morning, a woman named Sorry Scratch arrived at Stone's Manor, along with her 3 sons, and announced that she was calling in all our family's debts. I, not being aware that we had any, was disinclined to believe her, and opined that she and her progeny were all swindling impostors who would find no ready victim in me.
So I do want to say, as people who watch this channel know, I write and teach a good deal of fantasy fiction. And boy, howdy, do we right off at the front be like, let me fire off some names, some city names, some terms. Let me give you some pronunciations. So Claire, in that obviously wonderfully professional reading, and it's a wonderful book too. But the thing I wanted to ask was, for you, as you're in the process of doing this, you've got to be able to somewhat hook people, connect people, at least not scare people off. And there's a certain confidence, it feels to me, in the way that you're doing the reading, perhaps because of your own familiarity with your own work, that comes through there. Is that something that you yourself, I asked Andrew about voice, in this case, are you sort of settling in a confident way into the reading of the narration, even through those, subtext here, or subtitle, here's what this is, here's what this is? How do you do that in terms of the confidence with which you actually do the reading? Because it feels like that gets us through the pronunciations that might otherwise throw people off there.
What I have written. That I can't do anything about it. It's a published piece of work that I'm now as a
I love them.
professional
Don't
narrator.
get me wrong. Yeah,
No.
yeah.
What I'm trying to say is that I actually, as a narrator, have to read the text that's there.
Okay.
And that goes for if I'm reading an Amish romance novel or my own work or sci-fi, noir. So
Yeah.
so I don't have a choice about it. Has to be I have to give it 150%, and that goes for any text as an actor interpreting the text. So I have now narrated over 130 audiobooks, which is actually not a lot for audiobook narrators, but it is now. I have a bulk of experience to look at, and I don't write a simple text. It usually, I would say, like, normally it's 10,000 words to 1 hour. That is roughly how it is. And this book, Saint Death's Daughter, is 190,000 words. So it should be 19 hours and is in fact 24 hours or 23.
Wow.
I think because my average word might be this big, on the page.
Yeah.
I make up a lot of words, I guess. And you can see I'm not like dragging everything out either.
No.
So I guess the other thing is that for those books, particularly, that book took me 12 years to write. I have had, it was a book that taught me how to, my late 20s into my late 30s and early 40s. And at the end of all of that, there's a lot to feel about that time period and about the work that went into that book and how imperfect still a thing can be, no matter how much you love it, how hard and desperately you tried, and how many times you failed and then ultimately succeeded at this thing that you've thought you wanted for decades, and how different it looks. So what I did those 2 weeks that I was recording that audiobook, week and a half, was just finally make peace with it and celebrate it. And kind of like this text, Mike Allen, my publisher for Mythic Delirium, taught me this beautiful phrase when I was worrying about one of my other novels, and he's like, I stand by the work. And it was such a relief. And I've sometimes had to tell myself that I stand by the work. This is what it is. It is a complete work now. And for the first time, to read it cover to cover aloud to myself in a black box, what an honor, and how grateful I am. And so that, it's not exactly confidence maybe in this particular work as it is years of experience and gratitude and sort of wonder and weariness and all of that in trying to give it everything that it deserves, whether or not I think that I deserve it. All of that is a complex feeling when it's your own work, and you feel a lot of ways about it, but I have to stand by the work. So that's how the attitude I brought into it.
It's a really good answer. It shows you the emotional nuance that we bring to these things, right? We all know this is, people who do a lot of writing know this, but also the nuance you're doing even in the narration of it and sort of the way that comes through. That's good stuff. And I guess I will follow up with one question that I saw in Zoom chat. Can I bring that question up to people publicly? Can I do that? Because Andrew asked, and then I'm going to come to Tren next, do you find it difficult to suppress the desire to edit as an author and its audiobook reader? And that's a good question, because I often find myself when I'm reading my own work, I have to be careful not to do that, and sort of be like, this would sound better if I did this thing. I'm like, let's not do that. So what do you think about that, Claire? Let's answer that question. I know you already answered it in Zoom, but answer it for chat.
I mean, even with a dozen copy editors and 12 years of drafts, there are still actual typos or sentences that are like, what did I mean? Is it missing a verb? And if that is so, if it's like, I'd ask the audio engineer, I'm like, can I just, for my work, this is just my work, can I add this word here because I think that's what I meant? And they're like, it's your book. So I don't have to suppress the desire to edit, because they just let me edit. And it wasn't anything major. It was only a couple times, but it's sort of like, oh my God, there's another typo. And this is the final, this is what
amazing.
people are reading. Oh no.
Yeah.
But but that's the human, it's like the flaw in the carpet, right? That is also maybe endearing in a way that I'm trying to come to understand. With other people's work, it's the reader part of me and the writer part of me grapples with, like, I can't freaking believe they put that sentence on the page in that way. It makes no sense. I cannot make it make sense in my mouth. And the actor part of me is like, but it's your job. So just read it with confidence.
Yep.
You can't change it. There's been a couple times where the error was so egregious, like the main character had been named something the entire time, and then suddenly they were Lindsay. And a couple times I tried to write to the publisher, but more often these days, the the engineer and I might go like, I mean that character doesn't exist in this book. They're only here for one line. I think they meant this character who was already in the scene and talking. Then we just make that change.
Yeah. That makes sense. I said $2 insert name here. Is probably not actually that whole thing. Tren, let me come to you. I will admit, slightly self-serving here, because I will play a bit of the Gray Shade audiobook, which Tren just did beautifully, and I got chills when I heard the first part of this book. I don't remember if this beginning of it is that way, but we'll see. And actually, let me know if you could still hear this, because I don't know if...
This is audible.
Can you still hear that? That is audible?
Yes.
Okay.
By Tren Sparks. Titles rsarts.com.
Okay, here we go.
Part 1. Black. By hating death, you become its servant. By loving it, you become its master. You must always choose love. The first rite of devotion. Chapter 1. It's amazing how long it can take someone to die. Or to be exact, how long it can take someone to die if you're careless. Most people like to talk about the human body like it's a piece of glass. Breathe on it the wrong way and it'll shatter. Not that I mind. Talk like that makes my work a lot easier. But it's all nonsense, honestly. Children's stories and drunkards' rantings, often from people you'd think would know better. The worst are the soldiers. Get them home from a war, and most will swear to you they saw friends of theirs get cut in half by a single arrow, fall stone dead after one knife thrust to the knee. This while sobbing into mugs of mead, making apologies about what bad people they are. This is what war does to you. You ain't seen it, so you can't know. Nonsense. And boring nonsense, too. Everyone talks about how many people die in war, but I've always been more impressed with how many live. Oh, soldiers know how to kill. Some of them have gotten so used to hacking at strangers for king and country, they don't know how to do anything but kill. But they forget how hard it actually was when they were doing it, how the body kept going on a long time after the brain should have shut down and the person with it. Yes, people die slowly if you leave them to it. The body doesn't want to die. It's made to heal, to adjust, to get better. So it pays to be careful, to do the job right the first time.
As I've said to Tren many times, when I heard that first opening chapter, I just got chills, because from the very beginning of the opening line, it's amazing how long it can take someone to die. I was just like, yeah. And I knew what I was getting by this point, because I had known Tren for a long time. But the sort of the sense of and that's of course. There is no sense of humor in Gray Shade at all, to be clear. We've heard two somewhat humorous stories and one very much not humorous story. But just sort of how Tren settled into that voice. And as you said, Andrew, Gray Shade is very much, joking aside, the straight man, right? Like, he has to be someone that you feel comfortable going along with, and is kind of a thinking man's, James Bond, a thinking man's Jason Bourne. You have to understand the way that his mind is operating, and to do it in a way that you'll understand if his sort of path back to redemption, if it's even possible, is it even credible in the first place? And I think that only works if you kind of settle into that voice. So Tren, I guess my question to you is, because Tren was very good at, giving me a couple things about being like, did you mean this word here before I'm recording it? Because I'm like, yes, most of the time, but occasionally I'd be like, maybe not that particular one, because there was a typo, as Claire said. But I'm curious, Tren, as you were in the process of going through this, and reading, this book that you had not written this. This is the first time I've asked someone about a book you had not written. As you were sort of investing yourself in the voice, were there character sort of touchstones you used for this? Were there things that you said, I need to be able to render this voice properly, and I'm thinking about this other character from that to do it? Was it just like, I really deep read and understood the character? Like, how did you get into the voice to be able to render it in this way?
I don't know about many other narrators. For me personally, I will not start recording a book until I have read the whole thing all the way through at least once. As I often tell people, um, something. I tell people something. Um, I have two different things. One is something that I heard someone say is that you crap, come on. That if you know the main character dies at the end, it changes the way you say "once
Right.
upon a time" at the
Right.
beginning.
Yeah.
Right.
Ha.
And that's very much what I got with. It's surprising how long or amazing how long it could take somebody to die. You listen to it at the beginning and you listen to it at the end of the third book, and they are very, very subtly different, but they are the same lines because the character has changed so much.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But the other thing is, you can't do foreshadowing and subtle things if you don't know where the story is going.
Right.
You have to know where it starts, where it ends, and how it got there. And if you don't, I mean, I don't know if I see a lot of or hear a lot of younger narrators doing that. We were talking in the green room about how the differences between like European style and American style
Right.
narrators, and how things go so much more quickly. And you don't have a living style like I do, and like people who from radio do, whatever. But it feels like a lot of the younger narrators, especially people who started up during COVID, because this was something they could do at home.
Yeah.
And it was something that anybody could get into, that they just start at the beginning of the book and start going. They don't read it first. And so you can feel how the character isn't quite gelling the way it feels like it should be. For Gray Shade in particular, there were actually very few characters that I was like, okay, I need to make this sound like so-and-so.
Mhm.
We did get that in the third book, of
Yeah.
course, which I mentioned to you a couple of times,
Yeah.
because I was like, there's no way I'm not going to make him sound like this.
Yeah.
It's just too perfect.
Yes.
It has to
And
be.
it was perfect. Yeah.
It was, oh my God, I was just, and anytime it started to slip, I just go back into the old 7-Up commercials, and just like,
Yep.
never had it, never will. Okay, I'm in there. All right, let's go. And just wonderful. But like Rumor, for example, in the first book, the voice isn't exactly based on anybody. That's just the texture I got for him from the description of his
Okay.
physical form.
Okay.
I was like, this is probably, and I'm imagining what he smells like. That's never going to come through
Ha.
in the narration, but it informs my performance.
Mhm.
And I really, I love that kind of thing.
Can I ask you a question?
Please do.
So do you ever, like, if when you're super immersed in a either first person narration and you're doing like a series in that voice or a really long book, kind of like on a bathroom break, look in the mirror and be startled to see your own face?
Not just from that. Actually happened to me in drama class in high school once. We had a full-length mirror that was leaning against the back wall of the classroom, and I was like, who is this jackass in this trench coat that keeps staring at me? And I stopped, and I was about to say what, and as soon as I started to raise my hands, he did it too, and I was like, oh shit. And I looked around to make sure nobody else saw me doing that. And I was like, okay, I don't have to make him an excuse for, no, I was performing. But sometimes that does happen where I will, I don't have many mirrors around the house. There's like one in the bathroom,
Yeah.
and that's about it. But
It's
every
very
now
rare
and then,
for me. Yeah. There was a book by Edward Aubrey, a series of 5 books, and at first, maybe not a first person, but the main character was like a middle-aged Bostonian man, and I had so much fun doing his voice, but there was just like maybe by book 3, like 30 hours in, I just like took a bathroom break, so you have to take so many as a narrator, and I was like, whoa, like I was so like into like a whole different body from voicing this character.
Hmm. Actually, that's also a very good point, because your physicality of like some people will they prefer to narrate sitting down, some standing up, some they really like physically embody the character. They will just twerk, not twerk. That's not the right word. Whatever. I'm not a
Certain
writer. I
characters.
just
That's
so,
inhabiting something.
hopefully not in my booth. There's not that much space. But that kind of thing. It's like and sometimes it can just be your body. Sometimes you need props. One of the things we were talking about in the green room is the differences between using music and sound and whatever. When does it augment the narration and whatnot? My favorite example of that is one of the BattleTech novels I had read, where the main character goes up to see this head honcho dude who is sitting there eating curried eggs on toast. And so I was like, oh, and I ran to the kitchen and I made some toast and I brought it back. And anytime because the guy's talking while he's eating. So I'm like, I just start eating the toast while I'm delivering his lines. And later, when the book was published, and one of the reviews was the one part I didn't like was when he was talking while he was eating the food, and it just sounded gross, and nobody wants to hear that. And I'm like, yeah. It's like, oh yes, perfect.
That's
Little
inhabiting in every respect.
misophonia, is that what it's called?
I
Oh,
think so,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, well, I have one question for Andrew and then one general question for us before we start moving towards wrapping up. It's a really, really fascinating conversation. But I did want to give people a little bit of a sample of each of these folks because it's what we're talking about. I thought it was important. Andrew, with this discussion about inhabiting, the voice or the character of it and how you do it physically, Mark Hamill has often said that in a lot of ways he enjoyed being the voice of the Joker more than he enjoyed being Luke Skywalker, because as Skywalker he was always aware of his physical presence, whereas in the Joker he could just absolutely throw himself into the voice and make himself into a, quite literally in this case, sort of cartoonish version of what he would imagine. And the result was we got this spectacular Joker that is the gold standard for cartoon, villain creations. Like, it's just extraordinary stuff. So I'm wondering about that because you, of course, have experience working with the Muppets and being around that. And you just used the example of Gonzo before. Did you find as you were recording your audio for this, and or did Alicia, was there a lot of physicality in the way that you were performing, where you were kind of throwing yourself into, I understand that Saul's the straight man, but when other voices were coming up, did you find yourself sort of investing yourself physically in the way you were producing characters or not?
Yes, and from very subtle things, like when I had to speak as George Washington, there's a certain way that English people hold their chin and how they move their mouth versus side to side versus open.
Mm-hmm.
And so to get a more authentic sound, especially a more authentic sound from back then, you have to change the physical architecture of how you speak.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is the antagonist, the main villain of the piece, is a gentleman by the name of Ronald Hart. And I don't know if I should do spoilers, so I'll avoid it. And if you need some, I'll give you some. And he's very over the top, and he's very full of himself. And I found myself, when I was originally recording him, I stood up, and at the climax of every beat of his line, I would sort of thrust my hip to the side. And then when he finished the next line, I would go back the other way. And it just added this sort of energy. He's going here, and then he's going there. And it gave him all this sort of power and whininess.
Okay.
When I got to the point of doing pickups, I tried to do my pickups in my chair.
Oh, no.
And I found I couldn't get the voice. I thought I had entirely lost the voice. And I was like, well, I hope the first version was good and we can just live with it, because I don't know that I can do that again. And it took me it took me a couple hours to realize I had to stand up again. I actually had to physically be that character
Yeah.
in order to vocally be that character.
Yeah.
And that's something, as someone who's never been an actor, that I just didn't realize. And, some of the voices you do because you want to differentiate them. Some of the voices you do because that is the voice that character must have. There's a voice when we were just listening to Tren narrate your novel.
Mhm.
From the very first 3 words, I said to myself, well, gee, this is French farce. But no, I heard epic fantasy in all caps.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are certain cues you give to your listener when you're reading, and the listener needs it. And I'm going to go back to a quick theater thing, which is if you're writing a comedy, one of the things I've told people is you have to write a joke, and a funny joke, within the first 20 seconds.
Huh.
Because the audience needs permission to laugh.
Mm.
If they don't understand that they're allowed to laugh, when funny things come up later, they will sit on their hands and be uncomfortable because they don't know if they're allowed to be loud. But
see.
once the boulder starts rolling, then you can get them laughing, and then you start living within the moment. And so I think that also is part, even in an audiobook, when you're performing to yourself or you're performing to your director, you have to give yourself permission to go there. You have to give yourself permission that it's okay to be this absurd or this melodramatic or this whatever it is.
That's really interesting stuff. And
That-
yeah, go ahead, Trin.
That brings to mind something that I don't know if it applies, but the first thing that made me think of is Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead.
Yeah.
I don't think it would work if you didn't have like 800 years of heads
Tails,
over and over
heads,
and to the
heads,
point that you're just like, what is going on?
Yeah.
I don't think that the whole thing would have worked without the absurdity, as you say, of that just repeated moment over and over again.
Yeah. Especially in a film that doesn't necessarily code humorous to begin with, and also you're thinking about it from Hamlet. So you're like, well, tragic, so you have to be able to sort of set that code.
That's so funny that you say film. It's just like it was always a play to me, and I've never
Right.
seen the film.
Yeah,
Oh,
Tom
see,
Stoppard.
the Tim Roth and Gary Oldman, like, and just Richard Dreyfuss, to me, I'm always like, oh.
And now, do you think Tim Roth and Richard Dreyfuss do not strike me immediately as comedians for a Tom Stoppard? Did they do well? Did you laugh?
They did very
Brilliantly.
well.
Okay,
Well,
I
and
better see it.
the one who carries it is Oldman, who's just brilliant. But Tim Roth and Oldman are really great. I mean, the thing is about that.
Oldman can do anything.
That's true. The thing about that play, though, is that the play itself, though funny, is at root, I would argue, not comic. I would argue that it's got what did I do, Tren?
When you said the play, I heard is the thing.
Oh, the play's the thing. We'll catch a conscience of the no.
Yes.
The play itself is very darkly comic, right? There's a horror at the root of that play about the whole idea of heads, a fate that cannot be avoided, blah, 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 blah. Like there's a lot going on in that play. And it is very funny, but it's funny with a core of, oh my God, what are the implications of being characters doomed to die and who are bit
Gallows
characters
humor.
whose names we can't even properly distinguish among, right? Like there's an all joke about who's who. So anyway, so I want to ask one broad question, and then if Chad has any questions, please throw them to us, and then we will wrap up here. But the broad question I have is, there has been a lot of talk about how many aspects of publishing, many aspects of text publishing, many genres have had issues of late in terms of readership dropping. Whether this is because readership is actually dropping or whether it's because a variety of things that publishing does make it harder for readers to get to their books. Spoiler, I think that's what's happening. But anyway, whether that's the case, I don't know. But there has been that sense of that. Audiobooks, on the other hand, have been on a largely big upswing, really ever since the pandemic. And maybe you would know better than I would, all of you, whether this even predated that. But audiobooks have become increasingly not only significant for people to listen to, but also, and a lot of people that I've talked to have said, somewhat sheepishly, they've said, well, I listened to this in audio, so I wasn't like I was reading it. And I was like, oh, no. Like, if you're listening to the audiobook, you're reading the book. You're reading it in a different form. You're reading it in a different method. But you're still reading the book, because it's not like it's even an audio drama that is abridged, right? Like, you're getting the whole text. You're getting the, so that's fine. So a lot of people have said that is the way that they prefer to, as they would say in air quotes, read the work. So I'm curious about what all three of you think about that. Is there a sense that audio is providing something that text reading for some readers isn't working as well? Is it just that we're all super busy and so we can listen to something on a commute and we can't read on a commute? Like, what do you think is leading to this, if you believe that what I've suggested is true and that there is a kind of broader adoption of audiobooks and they are on the rise, where maybe not all text printing or publishing is going the same way? And anyone who wants to take that can.
I feel like pre-COVID, I remember being told that that audiobook numbers was one of the
Already going up. Yeah, okay.
was a growing industry in publishing, like one of the booming ones, which exploded with the smartphone. Like that was the turning point. So I do know that as a fact, though I haven't fact checked it, so don't trust me. And then the other thing I think is that it's not just commuting, but I think there's a matter of concentration. I know that as I've gotten older, and also COVID and everything, it's like I used to spend hours and hours and hours reading. And then now when I sit down to read a book, on the first day I can do 15 minutes, half an hour, or several sprints, but I kind of like get a little squirrely. Second day, I try again. I can read for a lot longer. And by the third day, I'm reading like a child again. There's like a muscle memory thing. But audiobooks are a more frictionless technology, which means I can wash dishes while I'm doing it. I can walk around the house. I can go to the bathroom, like I can go on a walk. I can go grocery shopping all while reading a book. So there's just more, it opens up a lot more time for reading. But it for me, because I'm also doing another task, it's sort of like, that's why I actually prefer to read a text first and then listen to it. And listen to it 20 times. I do re-listen, but I think that there's about that. And then, it really makes a commute so much more pleasant, so much less stressful. And I think people are working, the prices are rising. People are working really hard. Several adults with several jobs in a household just to keep the rent, So I think there's more people working, where there's fewer leisure hours, or at least it seems to me that way. And there's more desire to escape. And all of that feeds into an audiobook experience, I think.
Okay, that's fair. Andrew, Tren, thoughts about audio versus text in terms of popularity and so forth? What might be causing this, do you think?
So my first answer, and my most honest answer, is I don't know.
Okay.
I wish I really did understand the marketing and how people discover and where the community square for literature, whether they were audiobooks or print books, really is, and how we generate the grapevine that we used to. But I think what Claire said is probably really right. I mean, it's not only what she said about you being able to multitask with an audiobook. I think it's that the smartphone is omnipresent. It's just always there. And so it's really easy to turn on the audio and listen to something. And we're sort of been groomed that when we're doing things, I can use my phone to listen to a podcast. I can use my phone to listen to radio. I can use my phone to surf the internet. And I don't know, and again, this may be because my eyes are not as good as they once were, that I would really enjoy trying to read a book on a smartphone.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I'm perfectly happy listening to a book on a smartphone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always there.
So the constant presence of it is a big part of availability. availability, I
Ease.
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is that frictionless thing Claire referred to as well. Tren, what do you think? And I know I'm talking in your case, you're biased because you love the audio, but I know also you're a writer and love text too. So what do you think about this audio versus text?
Well, honestly, I think that both of my colleagues have touched on aspects of truth to this. For me personally, having a lot of friends who who are just unbelievably ADHD ridden, that as much as they love talking to me and listening to me do funny voices when we're in like a Discord call or something, they can't stand listening to my narrations because then they are reading at my speed, not their speed.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
know, Claire, you mentioned earlier that, you go through and you read really fast. And I used to do that when I was narrating. I would read one of the first pieces, most common pieces of feedback I got was, you need to slow down,
Me too. Yeah.
because there are people out there who are listening to this that English is not their first language, maybe not even their second language. And they are having to translate in real time what you're saying. And if you're reading as fast as you are, they can't keep up. And so I forced myself to slow down, but I don't now. That's the speed I read at.
Yeah.
Even when I'm reading for pleasure, I read very slowly, very deliberately, as though I were reading for narration
Ha!
purposes.
That's so
So,
interesting.
yeah. And so, I've got friends who are like, okay, I'll check this audiobook out. And I'm like, later, like a week or two later, I'm like, did you listen to it? And they're like, I did, but I had to like double the speed. And part of me is like, you bastard, you have ruined my performance.
It's amazing how long it takes someone to die.
Exactly.
My
You
friend,
know.
a dear friend, like the day the audiobook came out, the next day she was like, "Yeah, I read it." I'm like, "It's 23 hours long. How could you have read it?" And she's like, "Oh, I listened to it on 2.5 times
Oh
speed." And
my
I was
God.
like, but she'd listened to so many during COVID and long COVID for her, and that it was like 3 or 4. It was the only thing she could do, and so her brain processed a lot quicker, And so I don't have that experience. I like the reading pace, especially of an even slower reader than I am.
Mhm.
I love that. I find pleasure in it, but it really kind of reset my mind. I'm like, okay, that at least that technology exists for those people who need it.
Right. And I will vary my speed depending upon what's going on in the scene. Like with Battletech, during the combat scenes, I read it faster, not super fast, but fast so that the listener has to focus more to keep up what's going on, because combat is so frenetic
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it's so crazy. And so when the battle is over and we get into more of like the political intrigue stuff, I tend to read much more slow, not much more slowly, but slower than, and then I have that middle ground, which is everything else, just so that I can, it helps to carry through the vibe I'm trying to push through.
Yeah.
What this
Go ahead, Andrew. Sorry.
what this makes me wonder is, for those people who like to listen to audiobooks at 2.5, 3 times the speed, when they listen to Alvin and the Chipmunks, does it sound like normal speech?
Just imagining yakety sax at like half speed, for something. Yeah.
Yeah. I had this image of them actually thinking the opposite. Like they have to process even Alvin at the Chipmunks at like 4 times speed. Give me the Alvin of the. Yeah, exactly. Like just, but I do want to say that Tren's exceedingly good at that, as is something that I noticed about being able to sort of speed up and slow down. And I want to point out just to everyone in general that, in music and sound, we talk all the time about volume dynamics, how loud or soft something is, right? It's also critically important, I think, to dynamically pace. The person who is just always reading at the same speed all the time and does not vary and does not change, and this will be the way that it is for the that is wearing on a reader over time, and being able to, and it also makes it not live the way that you would expect an audio version to live, where you can speed it up a little more, slow it down a little bit. And when you choose to do that is totally dependent upon the actor's interpretation, the narrator's interpretation. But that you do it, I do think is important, because you can notice the difference between something that feels just like Steady Eddie never actually ever changes unless that's the character, but then that itself is kind of a bit, right? And someone that actually, like we do, speed up when we're excited because we're talking about, I can't believe this happened, and then slowing it way down when we want to emphasize the point, right?
You know, the first time I ever noticed that in a professional audio, like it was not something I ever thought about or paid attention to. I think I did it somewhat naturally,
Mhm.
but I was listening to Belle Sauvage by Philip Pullman,
Okay.
and I didn't know the narrator at the time. But I was like, this narrator, it's like he's right in the room watching everything and reporting on it. And then later I was like, oh, I didn't know the name Michael Sheen, but I knew who the actor Michael Sheen was later, and then reassociated it with Belle Sauvage. I was like, oh, it's that guy.
Yeah.
He's a superstar.
Yeah.
And there's a reason he's a superstar, not even knowing that he was one. I could hear it because he did everything so right. It was like better than right. And I'd never had an audiobook experience like that before.
Yeah, it all sort of clicked at that point. Yeah, that's sort of like, oh, that's who that was. Yeah, I can see that. Okay, we have one question from chat because we're running a little over, and I want to make sure that I'm respectful of these folks' time. Although I do want to highlight Zach Clay, Mr. Zach Clay, who will be joining me for Gloomhaven in a little bit. But Zach, who is also very good on the audio stuff, as you can tell if you go check out the Our Vocalist with Zach. But Zach says, reminds me of one of my favorite streamers who was blind, and because he would have to use screen readers or text-to-speech to navigate, he eventually got used to navigation speech at like 6 times speed. It was incomprehensible to his viewers, but in order to game and have a good reaction time, he adapted to understanding speech incredibly fast.
That's
and
so cool.
That's another important thing, which is to suggest that you can train your brain to operate at a certain speed. I was thinking about, you're talking about the speed, Claire, I was thinking about Critical Role and how many people have talked about watching that on like 2 or 3 times speed. And for me, that's like, it is so incoherent to me. Like, I feel like I would just go, I'm watching something that's so obviously morphed or altered, but I totally understand why, in the case Zach mentioned or others, that it speeds things up, that your brain adjusts to it, right? Because we are so capable of extraordinary nuance in how we listen as well as how we read. So, okay, one question from Prince Justin, then we'll get on out of here. Prince Justin says, question to all, do you feel there are books that don't make a good audiobook? And the question that I want to ask, because I think we addressed that a little bit, are there books that are better in audio? And that's the thing that I wanted to sort of focus on if we could. Is there a book that you're like, God damn, this is a really good audio formed, like this is good stuff. Is there a book like that is particularly good in audio?
Okay, I'm just gonna say this is another one of those subjective questions
Of course.
because a book is a book, and there's an infinite variety of narrators reading that book, and who, if you like that narrator and that narrator is giving you the
Totally.
surprising read of that, so like
For you though.
For me, exactly. And so like that's so for example, I loved the audiobook for Lincoln in the Bardo,
Okay.
which is a full cast audio, which which is rare that I will like that better than a single audio narrator, which I generally prefer. But Lincoln in the Bardo is so weird, and so funny and so odd, and there's all these voices. I was like, is that Susan Sarandon? Is that like Don Cheadle? You know, like that's David Sedaris? You know, like so it was constantly surprising me by the voices that were like familiar from a different like genre, like either radio or the movies or something, and I kept being whammied by it. But the text is so weird, it's so slippery. And we listened to it without having read it for the first time, and there's footnotes and there's all kinds of crazy stuff. So reading it would have been a totally different experience than listening, and I'm not sure it'd be better or worse.
Let me stop sharing for a minute. Can I stop sharing? That's a raid from Ted Durcia. Thank you, Ted Durcia, for the raid. It was Claire's
We are
point was so
now
dramatically
entering
awesome. We were
voiceover.
like, da-da-da, like Thundercats for Claire. Thank you, Ted Durcia.
Anyway,
Sorry, Claire, I still have to share on.
you know what? Lincoln in the Bardo deserved it. but again, my friend who tried to listen to it, she's like, I couldn't. It just slipped. She bounced off it,
Yeah.
and I couldn't understand how you could possibly bounce off that book in that structure. It was so absorbing to me. So I don't actually believe there's a yes or no answer to this question. I think it's like, sure, if your favorite actor is reading a book that you hated to read on the page, but then gives you a way to see it that you've never read before. Absolutely.
Yeah, interesting. Again, that's that re-perceiving, which everyone does differently, as how they re-perceive a particular interpretation of something too. Tren or Andrew, any books that you're like, this thing is super awesome in audio, or I hate
As compared to the written word, no, I have no.
Okay. Andrew, what about you? Do you have one that sort of stood out for you, better in audio, worse in audio?
So the first thought I had is sort of the restaurant analogy, which is, have you ever gone to a restaurant and you eat the meal there and it's perfect and you love the taste of every bite and it's one of the best meals that you've ever had in your life? And so you're like, I got to go back to this restaurant. And you go back there about a week later and you order the same meal and it's okay, but it doesn't have that amazing quality that you had the very first time when all the environmental stimuli were correct, that you really wanted that meal, and your taste buds were unused to those tastes. So I think that's part of it. The example that I keep thinking of, and I'm not sure it's the best example, is the Red Rising books, Pierce Brown's books.
Okay.
And I read the first book as a textbook, as text print. And I really enjoyed it. And I went to the library, and they didn't have the next book. So I got the CDs, I got the audiobook, and I plugged it in. And suddenly the characters were speaking in Scottish. And it was so dissonant
Wow.
from the voice that had been in my head in reading the first book that I actually couldn't enjoy it for about, I would say, at least a third of the book, because my brain kept saying, this is wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that's part of it. I think the other thing is, if you have a book which does either a lot of head hopping or is incredibly complex in terms of, say, a nonfiction book, and it's the opposite of the book that you want to read at 2.5 times speed, where you really want to digest it and take some time and actually do some side research as you're reading it. I don't know that that book would be as well experienced in audio form, because audio form is more, and correct me when I'm wrong, I think audiobooks are a little bit more forgiving for the listener than print can be.
It's interesting. And yeah, I mean, there probably are some things too that don't. Yeah, the head hopping and so forth would sort of disconnect you from what's happening. Like, I'm trying to think of somebody doing an audiobook for The Sound and the Fury, and like, good luck. That's a book that I was just Faulkner famously wrote multiple times to his editor demanding that the typesetter put things back the way he put them, because he's trying to do this from this person who basically is essentially dealing with psychotic breaks and everything, and like it just. And he's like, stop changing what I wrote. And I was just thinking about someone trying to actually render that in audio, and God help me.
And yeah, it would be difficult, but for some people, that will be their only way ever to experience Faulkner. So it still should happen. They still should
absolutely.
100%. If it's about reading or not reading, 100% should. Yeah. I was just thinking about like the degree of difficulty for actually
it would be a very complex text.
Yeah.
But like, there are
if
people
it's done well, it's amazing.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it'd be so complex. They'd have to be like top tier, like a Tren,
like one of these people that I have with me. This has been a delightful conversation, and I want to start. I will just say, and as we do a little bit of an outro here, Claire, thank you very much again for doing this. Is there anything you want people to be focused on, either in writing or in narration, or both, that you'd like people to be aware of coming up from you soon?
Greg, I'm so happy to tell you, which I don't know if you know, maybe you do, that on Sunday, Mother's Day, I finished the first draft of the last book of
I
my
did know that,
trilogy.
and I congratulated you on Blue Sky. I was like,
oh, you did. I'm
so
still like Blue Sky. I check like once a day. So thank you for telling me and reminding me again. But so that's coming out next April. It will, and so that's the culmination of, let's see, it's 2028, 29. Just thinking of like when I started it, 2009 to now, however long that is. That's
wow.
like that part of my life is a big chunk.
Yep.
So that's coming up, and then My brother, who's also an actor, is just starting to, over the last year, is starting, he's like took a course in voice acting, and was really wants to break into voice work. And I have very little of use to give to him because I got lucky with one opening somewhere. So what use I could be to him, I was, but I wanted to make audiobooks of two books that I hadn't yet. My collection Dark Breakers and my standalone novel, The Twice Drowned Saint. And Dark Breakers has two novellas at the beginning that are dual voice, which I was initially just going to do them, and I was like, ooh, or I could hire my brother to be the other voice, and work with him. And like, we had so much fun. He was recording from Phoenix, in a studio that he rented, and I was recording remotely at the studio that I go to. Our audio engineers, I was like, yeah, give him the full experience with audio engineers, because he'd only done self-recording before.
That's super cool.
And and so we did complete the Dark Breakers project, and I finished Twice Drowned Saint. The next step is going to be like how to marketing announcements, maybe do a bit of Kickstarter to help with some of that, like a small one, but to help get the word out. And so I'm very excited. So sometime in the next year, audiobooks for Dark Breakers, The Twice Drowned Saint, and Carlos and my short story and poetry collection called Infernal Bargains, which is all short stories and poetry that we wrote based on draws from our weird deck of oracle cards from our tabletop role-playing game, Negocios Infernales. We do things called infernal salons. We do them at cons.
We do them here
at libraries.
multiple times.
We do them here.
Yep.
And so we have written so much from all of the infernal salons that we've run that we were like, as a backer award level, we put together a collection. It was our first collaborative collection. And we were like, wow, we're doing all these other audiobooks. Why don't we just spend a little extra and do this? So Carlos and I collaborated on an audiobook. And so it's Carlos's dear beloved voice and me, and we both did our own stories. And so sometime in the next year, you'll hear more announcements about those audiobooks coming out, but they're all like labors of love and projects to, for me, it's like to complete an oeuvre, because I've like, if I didn't do it, I'm not sure anybody would have. And I really had an itch to scratch. So I'm excited about those things.
Very, very cool. I'm excited to hear them. And again, the Saint Death series is a great series, and you should check them out. Can confirm. But thank you, Claire, so much for being a part of this, as always. Claire was also in one of my storytelling presentations that we did at St. John's, which was great, with Ali Trotta and Antoinette Brimbell, and was awesome as part of that, doing some poetry reading as well. So anyway, thank you, Claire.
My pleasure.
Tren, thank you again, my friend, for this. This was really great as well. Always love talking shop with you about this stuff anyway, but really appreciated hearing this from the point of view of someone who's done a lot of these things, and the nuances of how to really prepare yourself. Tren is a very prepared role player and a very prepared audiobook narrator, so that stuff comes through. And you should hire him for all your voice acting projects, by the way. Let's not forget about that. You should,
or my brother.
You should do that, right? Or Claire's brother. You should hire Tren and Claire's brother for everything. There's just gonna be this run of like 5 years where like it's gonna be like Samuel L. Jackson in every movie. Like Tren and Claire's brother will be in everything. Anyway, but Tren, thank you a lot.
I should throw out my sister too.
yeah. Right. That's right.
And
That's
Andrew's
fine.
sister.
Hire all the people that we didn't talk about or have on the stream today. But Tren, thank you for that. Anything you want to highlight for people to check out in terms of audio? I know you do stuff for Podcastle and so forth. So an Escape Pod. So any of those things / new audiobooks coming out from you?
Well, actually, I was going to mention Escape Pod and Pseudopod. I haven't done anything for Podcastle yet.
Okay. Sorry, Pseudopod. That was the other one I was thinking.
Yeah, it's all in the Escape Artist umbrella.
Yeah, love them.
Oh, it's so much fun to do work. I did some stuff with Drabblecast a long time back, and started with Starship Sofa way back. But yeah, most of the stuff that you can find from me for that kind of stuff is from Escape Pod and Pseudopod. I'm going to be, it's not due for me to turn in until July, but Richard Dansky's next installment of his werewolf short story series, I'm going to be doing that one now. I just love it so much. Because I love werewolves. So, they're just so, I just love them. I just want to squinch their, face. Anyway, yeah, I'm a little weird. Anyway, so What else have I got going? Just every time I think I've got a lock on how things are going, John is like, okay, what are you working on right now? I'm like, this was the thing you told me to work on. It's like, I need you to stop and work on this. I'm like, uh, okay, all right. And then like yesterday, he's like, what's the status with this? I'm like, it was finished a year ago. And he's like, right, okay.
Oh, that sounds a
What
lot
about
like
this one?
that sounds a lot like John.
Yeah,
Also,
yeah.
in a lot of ways, that's funny.
Hmm.
So all those things, but you should check that out. And of course, you'll see Tren here doing gameplay, tabletop gameplay of various types. But really enjoy the audiobook stuff.
And if you want a video game thing, and if you play Skyrim and you like modding your game, look at the Beyond Skyrim Bruma mod, which
Where
we
Tren
did
did
in
every voice.
2011. No, 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 no. But I was probably one of the big three. One of the other guys was, um, crap, I just forgot his name. I can't believe I just forgot his
Guess you were
name.
bigger than him. Hey,
No, 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 no. He
just
went on to do Dying Light 2 and voiced Legoshi in the American dub of, or in the English dub of Beastars. And I cannot believe I just vapor locked on his name. That is so frustrating. Anyway, yeah, go play that and get to listen to me as orcs and Khajiit and people.
Oh, that's
Not that
fun.
they're not people.
Thanks, Tren. Good stuff as always. Really appreciate you being a part of this. Jonah Scott, Zach says.
Yes, Jonas Scott, thank
Yes.
you.
Yeah. But thanks, Tren. Really good stuff today. And last but certainly not least, Andrew, thank you for being a part of this. I really appreciated your perspective as someone who had, audio experience and radio experience, but not so much on the acting side, and was getting into that here with the way that you invested your own work with Audio Life. So I appreciated that a great deal. I have not read Hornytown Chutzpah yet. I will. But I am looking forward to it because I have heard many good things about it. And so thank you for being a part of this. And I guess same question. First of all, let people know where they can get Hornytown Chutzpah, but also anything else you want to mention in terms of, is there a sequel to this? Will there be more productions of the Hiller siblings, in our future? What else do you have planned for coming down the line?
So there have been whispers from the publisher, from Athos, that they would like to have a Horny Town sequel already,
Okay.
which is exciting. There is always that little cynical part of me that wants to see what the response to the book is.
Mhm.
Are there sufficient numbers? So I would say, in my craftiest voice, it's up to you.
Only you, dear readers / listeners.
Right. I just signed a contract to do my first graphic novel, so that's going to be fun.
Awesome.
I can't actually talk about it in detail, but you guys know about that. And thank you for letting me be part of this. Thank you for letting me hear your stories and share. I've been joking with my friends that, I'm the audiobook virgin here. I'm the one who's like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Ooh, Tren, does that make us masters of the orgy?
The silence of, yes, it does.
Yeah, Prince Justin's like, oh no, it's
So many werewolves.
don't
So many
that to
werewolves.
Tren.
It's silent on the outside. Inside,
No,
however,
no.
oh, there's a racket going on. And whoa.
Oh my God. But it was a pleasure having you on as well, Andrew. And thank you so much to this esteemed panel. Hopefully we could do it again somewhere down the line. Thank you again to C.S.E. Cooney chat. And also, can we get some love for C.S.E. Cooney? Thank you to Tren Sparks. Thank you to Andrew Hiller. Go get their books. Go listen to their stuff. And thank you all for being here. Thank you, audiobook and author folks. And I'll see you folks again. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. All righty. Good stuff. Now, I am not done streaming, to be clear, because next up is Zach. We're going to get another audio person, and we're going to have 5 more hours of audio talk. No, Zach and I are actually going to be playing a game. I'm going to bring Zach on now. But that was really fun, and I'm really glad we were able to do something like this. I really love the experience of being able to chat with different people about their craft. It's been great to be able to talk to union reps about the work that they're doing. It's been great to talk to a variety of authors about work that they do in various interview contexts, and it was great to be able to do that with these folks too. So you should absolutely get Hornytown Chutzpah. You should get all the Saint Death's books from Claire and her other books too. You should get all of the audio stuff from Tren, and there are many examples of that you can find. So you should get all those things, because these are talented people who deserve as much love as they can possibly get. So, okay. So what we're going to do now is I am going to bring Zach on, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to have to fire up a few things. I had to get this. There's only so much you can do when you're sort of transitioning with this. So I'm going to stop recording for just a moment. I'm not going to stop streaming, though. And then I'm going to switch up the stream title, and I'm going to bring in Zach, and we're going to play us some Gloomhaven. So don't go anywhere if you like strategy, and I'm sure Zach will talk more about audio stuff. So just a second here. I'm going to stop the recording. All those who came for the audiobook watching on YouTube, thank you for being here, and I'll catch you down the line. Come back on Saturday.